Last time we built inside of this Be Quiet Dark Base 901 Pro, and ignoring the fact that it was easy as hell to build in it, now I wanted to find out how much of a benefit all of these airflow enhancing methods truly can create. Now we have two different ways, or three actually, how we can improve the airflow inside of the 901. The first is there are these sound dampening panels in the top. Now I have an AIO in here. We have the Be Quiet Silent Loop 2 and 360 in the top, so installing those here they will choke it to death. So if you want to have any fans in the top, you basically need to remove them, otherwise it's just going to be a choking game here. So we already removed them. That's not really a feature because the top still has mesh. It's either there is a fan or there isn't any, but the mesh will be there anyway. Now for the front, that's a different thing. By default you have the mesh panel, as you can see here, but you can remove it and replace the top part essentially with this panel. So you don't have two really separate panels, you just have a piece of the panel that can be popped off and replaced with this mesh one. Now originally there is going to be the same sound dampening thing in the front. There it does make sense. You have some space, you have a lot more space for the front fans, and you can pull air through these gaps right here. You could potentially also pull a bit through here, but it's for the top it's a choking game. For the front it does work, it does sound dampen a lot, but this is going to be way better performing. We hope it is well better performing. But we will see that today. Then we have another two features. First off, we have a fan in the bottom, which is at the very front of the case. It's installed instead of the hard drive cage, which is there by default. Now the fan in the bottom is pulling air from the bottom and then pushing it out to the top. Originally it is just closed off, so it doesn't do anything essentially, but you can install this here on top of the PSU shroud, which is redirecting the air into the GPU, hopefully reducing its temperature or providing it with more air. Then the last feature is the three fans on the side panel. They are not there by default. By default you have a bracket that supports hard drive, so we removed it, installed three fans, and yeah, it pulls air through the back panel. That's essentially what it does. Now I prepared a little something already here. The GPU is already heating up so that we have an, let's say, ambient temperature or without enhancement temperature, and I have mapped out all of the fans. And how all of this is going to work. We will start with a default setting as if no option has been installed, meaning no front panel and no fan in the bottom. That's why the side panels are not spinning, the bottom fan is not spinning, and only the back, the top and the front ones are spinning, the ones that are there by default. Now, all of them are spinning at an absolute minimum. The front fans are spinning at essentially 800 and something RPM. I'm controlling them through the case. That's the lowest mode. And I found out, because it's the same fan, that that is roughly the equivalent of 40% on one of these Be Quiet Sounding 4140 spinning at 1900 RPM. That's why the back fan is spinning at set 40, so they are roughly spinning at the same speed. The same 40% are also applied to the Be Quiet Silent Wing 4 Pro 120s in the top that are sitting on top of the AIO. The first thing I wanted to find out is if this redirectional piece for the PSU shroud really does redirect the air of that bottom fan into the GPU as well as I hope it does. I have prepared something. We have Firmark in the background already running. It's the RTX 4080 Phantom from Gainward. It's a very good card. The cooler does work very well, and we have the fan spinning at an absolute minimum of 30% of their max speed. Firmark is running at 4K 8x MSIA, and the card is sitting at a snuggling 57.9 degrees C. It is going a bit up and down, but you can see about 57 to 58. Now the bottom fan is still not spinning. We have it here. It does essentially nothing, and we have right now still the completely sealed off cover installed. We will remove it, install this one, and then see if anything happens to the GPU temperature. Going in with the airflow enhancement one. It is installed. And now let's make the bottom one spin at 100%. It started up 1000 RPM, 1300, 1500, 1600, 17, 18 and 19. And there it will stop. And now you can basically just watch the temperature. Everything else, the clock speed, the effective clock, everything is pretty much stable. I'm happy with that. We are just looking at the GPU temperature overall. Well, that was disappointing. No, I already knew that. In order to test all the settings and where I should put everything, I already tested the GPU once at this cover here. And no matter if I let the GPU fan spin really quick or really slow and the bottom one really quick, really slow or vice versa, it does nothing. In the very best, it does nothing. In the very worst, it seems to create like a vortex that just does nothing and keeps heat in there, and then you see a bit of a jump up, like 1 or 2 degrees max, but the bottom fan doesn't do anything. Like, you can feel that air is going there. It's not that that doesn't work, but essentially nothing really happens. Piece of paper isn't even lifted, even a tiny bit. In the bottom, I mean, there is suction. I think the redirection is happening way too far away, so that even Be Quiet Silent Ring 4 spinning at 1900 RPM aren't doing anything anymore. If you put your hands on there, you can feel it, but it's like that's basically how it feels. I knew that this is going to happen, but it's kind of sad. Lesson learned: the bottom one doesn't do anything. It's ridiculous that this is even being considered as a feature. Maybe if you stack 3 fans on top, if you use something like a 50mm thick fan, you know, a delta fan, then maybe it will be close enough to create any sort of effect. But right now, nothing. You can feel that it's happening, but it is far too weak to create any effect on the GPU. Now, the next thing I wanted to test is the front. So I'm just gonna leave Firmark running and let's just start Y Cruncher. Great. Yeah, okay, I'm really sorry if the PC is starting to, or if my recording will start to do weird stuff. That's because I'm hitting everything really hard here. Okay, pretty much settled from the beginning fairly. Oh no, it's going up. 83. Oh, you know what? While the CPU or while the water cooling loop is being heated up to a certain point, let's use this opportunity and really test the top sound dampening panels, if they really restrict it so much so that once I install them, we should be able to see like a huge spike or a spike whatsoever, and then we would just see how much of a change that essentially does. Hello, come off. Okay, the top panel doesn't want to come off. What the hell? Yeah, normally you should have been able to see it during the B-rolls because of how should I say, how the fans are glued to that top panel. Once you install these, there is literally no air that can even come in. I don't know what they thought here. Okay, now all of them are in. I don't even need to put the mesh panel on top because that's already it's already sealed off at this point. And you can see the spike. You can see the spike immediately how it goes up just because I put on those sound dampening panels. So no, if you have any fan in the top, do not install the sound dampening panels. They are choking hazards at this point. Not that this is like a minus or anything. It was meant to be that way, but keep that in mind in case you want to install anything in the top. The front can do the sound dampening panels with fans, the top doesn't. Okay, and you can already see the temperature goes down again. So now let's just give it a minute to recoup from what we just did to it, and it should settle somewhere in the 88.0 degrees C range. We are now at 88.8, which is still due to the choking hazard. You can see here we were sitting at 87, pretty much flat, and then we installed the dampening panel. And here you can see when we removed the mesh filter, and then it went all the way up to 89, so we lost almost 2 degrees C, and now we are going down again, 88.5, 88.4. It's an AIO, it will take some time. While we wait for that, let's remove the front panel already and install the mesh filter. Okay, so before we flatlined at 87.4, 87, yeah, pretty flatlined 87.4. Now we are sitting at 87.5. We are still recouping from that top panel installation, and I can see that we are dropping and dropping and dropping. I can see that we are still pulling roughly 150 watts, so everything seems pretty stable. Now we are sitting at 86.9. It is going down. We already won a tiny bit. We won 0.5 until now compared to the flat line here, which means we won about half a degree C. Now, half a degree C does not sound like a lot. That's true. But for anything that's like more meshy for the front, it does not necessarily mean that you win so much more performance. But what it does mean is that you can now push the fan speed down. Now, I can't do that, unfortunately, because the case is controlling it, and I couldn't go less than those 40% anyway, so it's not something we will test today, but in a real-world scenario, that would mean that you can reduce it by 5, maybe 10% of the PWM setting of the front fans, so the whole thing is a lot quieter, while having the same, or roughly the same temperature. So, yeah, we dropped even further. We are now sitting at 86.5, so we almost won a degree, 0.9 until now. So yeah, the front does something. It is not, you know, the end-all be-all, but it did change something. Now, unfortunately, I forgot the whole time to open the core clocks, but I knew what they were in the beginning, and I know what they are now, so they are plus minus 10 megahertz. They are the same thing, nothing changed here. So far, so good. The front does something. Now at this point, let's just activate the side ones. But before we do that, I need to remove one isolating piece that I left in there purposefully so that no air can escape from there. Because when I installed the whole thing, I intentionally put this thing behind the fans so that it's not possible that the front fans, for example, push air through the sideways mounted fans and then out on the left side of the case, and this does it, or this blocks it. Now we removed it, so at this point we can start up the side fans, and let's just say we will also put them to the same speed as the front ones, and let's then see what happens. And it starts dropping again. So far, in like a 2-minute span, the CPU temperature dropped from 86.5 down to 86.1 roughly, so a very small difference. Although I allowed the fans to spin at their max speed, 2400, so that's not that much of a difference. However, if you let them spin slowly, because that's also something I found out, it doesn't change anything if I let them run at like 30%. Or at 100%. It's a bit more air, thus everything will be cooler. At this point, let's close up the front again with the isolating panel and allow the side fans to spin to see what the difference between the two scenarios is. And kudos to Be Quiet how easy it is to remove these panels. You can see live on camera, it takes like a minute. Dip, dip. Oh, easy. Okay, let's give it another minute and allow the fans again to spin at max speed. So just as a reminder, with everything closed off, so the front and the side, and just the front fan spinning, we were sitting at 87.4. Then by allowing the front to be ventilated, we dropped to 86.9 roughly. And then with the side panels added to that, we dropped to 86.1, 85.9, something in that range. In this scenario here, it's only the side panel, so we are comparing it to these 86.9 roughly. It's pretty interesting. Just by allowing one thing or another, you can see a drop of like half a degree. Side panels add half a degree, front mesh filter adds half a degree. They do something. In the bottom one doesn't do anything, and the top one, it's, if you don't use fan, use the top one, or the sound isolating piece. That way noise doesn't, run out in the top. But if you use fans, you need to remove them, otherwise you will choke them. But don't expect, 5 degrees C of a difference. It's a tiny bit, but that tiny bit can mean that you can push the fan down by 10%, especially for the front ones. So that's really interesting. Now, it doesn't change the world, but the front and the side, those two are doing something. Now, a last test that I wanted to do is just push everything to the top, also the GPU, every fan at absolutely max speed. Now everything is maxed out. I also, because I'm controlling it through the case, I also made the fans on the AIO one at max speed and the front ones. And now I just wanted to see how much of a change it does if I replace the front one with the mesh filter. That's, I think, the most interesting test. You can already see how the GPU is dropping and dropping and dropping. The CPU, same thing. Let's give it a minute to cool down everything. What the fuck is 162 degrees C die max temp? No, that something has to be wrong there. That's not true. That never happened. That thing would have been fried. But sure. Okay, I think we pretty much flatlined here. Everything running at max speed. We are looking at roughly 79.9 degrees C on the die, and the GPU is sitting between 48 and 49 degrees C. Now let's remove the front panel again, quickly replace that noise dampening filter with the mesh one, and just see max performance. We were sitting at roughly 79.9, now we are going down even more down, 79.4, 79.3. The GPU obviously did not change a lot, although it could have. It didn't should have, but it could have. However, because the bottom fan is almost completely sealed off due to this very unnecessary cover, the bottom fan doesn't really do that much. So it's not like there is a lot of air being pushed from the front. But yeah, this is the most interesting number now. We are seeing close to a degree C, very close, maybe we will get there on the CPU if we allow the front ones to work. Let's give it another minute to just see that it dropped a degree. Yeah, there we have it, it dropped a full degree C. Yeah, it flatlined. Okay, for today I have every number that I need. So if you're watching this to see how much of a cooling power performer the Be Quiet DockBase Pro 901 is, it's a complicated topic because everything is very specific to the build. So do not take the numbers that we gathered today at face value. They are not going to apply to you. The thing is, I now know that the bottom fan, for example, the one that... Where is the useless cover? Oh, here. I now know that replacing this panel sitting at the very front of the PSU shroud with the airflow one and installing a fan in the bottom did not create any difference. No matter what setting I used, no matter what I did, zero difference. The GPU did not benefit from that additional fan. It's very unfortunate, but it is how it is. Maybe if you use a delta fan, maybe if you use here, if you use there, maybe if your GPU spans to the front, but in this scenario, using a Gainward Phantom 4080 RTX 4080 Phantom did not generate any result that I could interpret as positive nor negative. The same cannot be said about the front, the side and the top. The top, you need to remove the sound dampening panels if you want to use the top ones. Either you are going to choke them to death or they are going to do nothing. If you have an AIO, the thing will overheat at some point. Air cannot get out. If you use it just with fans, you are doing nothing. You are just adding unnecessary noise, so don't use any. If you don't use the top with fans of any kind, then sure, let the sound dampening panels in there because it takes away noise. That makes a lot of sense. The same thing, or less of a impactful thing, applies to the front. Having the sound panel and did not create any, how should I say, any temperature concern, but removing it push the temperature down with a 7950 X3D with a Be Quiet Silent Loop 2 360 tuned with 3 Be Quiet Silent Wing 4 Pros, it pushed the temperature on the die down by 0.5 degrees C. That number does not apply to you if you do not have exactly the setup, but it does provide me with the valuable information for the review that the front works. Replacing it does give you a benefit, a measurable benefit. That's really important. The exact same thing applies to the sidewise mounted fans. Using the side fans and leaving the closed off panel in the front generates roughly the same amount of temperature reduction than just the mesh in the front. Why does it do that? Probably because the side mounted fans are pulling the air straight through mesh filter and they are not directed immediately to the GPU, so to anything actually, just like the front, and then it needs to turn. So the impact of those is not going to be as big, but using both together, so still the front fan spinning, but with the sealed off front, all of that will also generate roughly 0.5 degrees C. Open everything up and you're looking at 1 degree C, which also makes a lot of sense, but just in this context. Remove all of the contacts and you have the front does something, the side does something, both do a lot, and the top needs to be removed if you want to use it at all. And the bottom doesn't do anything. So that's what I needed. If you are here to find out if you should do each of these things, now you know. Side yes, front yes, top if you use, absolutely. If not, just leave it in. The bottom, don't even bother. It's a waste for a fan. That's unfortunate, but that's how it is. But okay, I hope you found what you were looking for. For me, I have all the numbers, so I can now start writing the review for this puppy. It's going to be a freakishly long review, as always with Be Quiet cases or Fantex cases. It's just so much to cover. Those things are so freaking huge, but it's going to be a fun one. But for today, this is going to be it. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you wanted to know any other thing or wanted us to try any other thing inside of this case, write it down in the comments below. I will leave the PC built like this for another week or two because I need it for other things, so I can still do stuff to it if somebody is looking for information. But for today, this is going to be it. I would like to thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.